thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on professional skills for the pharmacy technician. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us for the webinar and to learn more about this new text. Professional Skills for the Pharmacy Technician was just published and released January 7th. It's now available for your use in your courses. I wanted to just go over a few quick details about the text. It is a first edition, 220 pages. It has a 7:9 trim size and a current list price of $39.95. And the ISBN is listed here, 978-14496-2982-3. And I'd like to introduce myself and our author. I'm Grace Richards, the Marketing Manager for Health Professions at Jones & Bartlett Learning, and joining me today is author Stephanie Peshek. Before I introduce Stephanie, I'd like to quickly share a few comments about her book. We have received reviewer feedback from pharmacy technician instructors, and there really is a lot of great praise for this text. So far, instructors like this textbook and find it very unique. One instructor enjoyed the discussion of more of the business aspects of the pharmacy technician role and how the book showed the reality of the job. And I just wanted to read that first quote because I thought it was pretty profound. He says, "The manuscript is great. I thought I would be reading a book that was geared towards pharmacy technician topics such as math, pharmacology, institutional pharmacy, etc. It took me by surprise that the manuscript discusses and explains the business aspect of the pharmacy profession. I have yet to come across a text like this one. I really enjoyed each topic. I liked how the manuscript brought reality to the pharmacy technician role and discusses the everyday occurrences of the job." Another instructor found the information in the text very helpful and not usually found in other texts, especially the case study scenarios, which you'll hear about. And the third instructor stated that the text will give students a better understanding of real-life situations and help the pharmacy technician to be a considerate, valuable professional, aware of situations while maintaining integrity as well as work ethic. And this instructor was pleased that this text can help students to use critical thinking skills to handle situations. You can see more details and comments from these instructors on the quote on this slide. I do really love the positive feedback we keep hearing from instructors. This text, Professional Skills for the Pharmacy Technician, really does provide excellent insight and information to help students so they can be prepared to successfully transition into their career as a pharmacy technician. And without any further delay, I'd like to introduce our author, Stephanie Peshek. Stephanie is an Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice as well as the Director of Curriculum at LeComm School of Pharmacy in Bradenton, Florida. Thanks for joining us today, Stephanie. I wanted to ask you if you would quickly tell the audience a little bit about your roles, your background, and just how you came to develop this text. And then we'd love to hear more about your text and your approach to the material and how these instructors can utilize this text in their course.
Okay, thank you. I've been associated or involved with pharmacy since the day my dad took me to the pharmacy where he worked. He was a community pharmacist and gave me one of those little blue counting trays and a bag of M&Ms and sat me on the counter. So I've been involved in some way in pharmacy for a really long time. I started working as a pharmacy tech and cashier when I was 16 and then interned throughout pharmacy school in a community pharmacy. Then I've also worked in long-term care pharmacies, and most of my career has been in hospital and health system pharmacy. So I have a little bit of background in most of the main areas of pharmacy. I first got involved in technician training when I started out as a pharmacy director in Cleveland, Ohio. Some of the technicians that I worked with were among the first to become involved in tech certification. That movement actually started in the Midwest, and some of my techs were involved in that from the beginning. And I've kind of always felt that we're teaching pharmacy students all these great clinical things that they should be doing, but they can't do those things unless they're backed by really good technicians. that are, you know, helping them to run the pharmacy. And I was in Ohio when the tragic death of Emily Jerry created some changes in the laws and required technicians to be certified in Ohio. And I was director of one of the first hospital pharmacies to have a completely certified technician workforce. During the years that I was a hospital pharmacy director, I had a lot of conversations with technicians and pharmacists about how we could improve the workflow, how we could improve the teamwork, how we could make people more satisfied and enjoy their jobs more. And a lot of the discussions involved people skills and how everyone in the health system could benefit from having a better understanding of people skills and thinking about what other people were doing in their roles and how they might be able to work together. And that's kind of how this book grew. It grew from those discussions and people saying that everybody needed more of that. So this slide has an overview of kind of what's in the book. The idea behind this book was I think there are a lot of texts that have aseptic technique and calculations and some background about drug classes, but I wanted to have something that was different that would basically drive critical thinking and get people thinking about situations they might find themselves in and how they might deal with the situations instead of having to think about it on the fly when you've got an angry patient standing in front of you or something like that. So I also talked to some tech training program directors and asked like what they wanted, and what I got back from them was that they didn't want a huge, big textbook kind of thing that looked like a reference book. They wanted it to be more conversational, and they wanted to be able to take what was in the book and add their own stuff and their own discussions and make the class a little more of a give and take, kind of an active learning thing. So that's what I was really shooting for, was to create some cases. Almost every case that's in the book is something that happened somewhere that I worked or that someone told me about in a place that they worked. There's a couple very basic ones that I made up, but almost all of them are real cases, things that happened, and things that both pharmacists and technicians were kind of baffled by, you know, how do I handle this? So the idea was to have like a starting point for you to be able to discuss these issues with the people that are training to be techs. Another thing is that I thought that the book could actually be used within departments of, you know, either a community pharmacy or a hospital pharmacy, where people could read a chapter or read a case and discuss it among themselves, and it could be used outside of the classroom. So my first thought was in the classroom, but then I also thought that the way I set it up, they could use it to do like kind of in-service education within the workplace. So the next slide has the table of contents. As you can see, I really tried to include things that are not in the typical textbook for pharmacy techs. Some things about inventory control, performance evaluations, and how you deal with them on both sides, either as a supervisor who's new to that or as the person who's getting the feedback. How do you deal with that? Human resources policies and some of the background behind why there might be policies, union membership, dealing with robberies, dealing with coworkers who might be substance abusers. So I tried to include things that don't necessarily come to mind when people first think about a training program, but are so important once you're in the workforce. The next slide has the different pedagogical elements. So I tried to briefly describe topics. I tried to use illustrations because I think some people are more visual learners, and so I'd use an illustration with a caption that kind of explains why that might or might not be an important thing to talk about in the class. I included questions for discussion as a place to start. And then assignments in each chapter that whoever's teaching the course could actually just, give homework assignments based on, some of them based on the case studies, some of them based on other things in the chapters. And then the next few slides have some examples of some of those different elements. So the first one is a couple of different quotes. One of them is from Tom Strauss, who was one of my favorite bosses that I ever had. He was the CEO of a big health system that I worked at in Akron, Ohio, and he was very interested in servant leadership. And what he would say to all of us is, if you're not taking care of a patient, you'd better be taking care of someone who is. So as a manager, he was always encouraging us to make sure that our employees were getting what they needed, the resources and, the help that they needed to do their jobs. So I tried to include some things like that to get people thinking and talking. The next slide shows just some of the references, the definitions of different things. As I was talking to some techs, there was some discussion about how sometimes people just throw around words from management coursework or something like that, and they haven't really had that and don't know exactly what they're talking about. So I tried to put some things like that in there. Like I said, I tried to make the descriptions mostly kind of conversational. Some of the hospitals that I've worked in have had bargaining unit unions for some positions and not for others. Some have had all the positions were unionized, some had none. And so I tried to explain kind of where unions came from, why they're used in pharmacy, what the goal is, and that type of thing. So I didn't want to make it too textbook sounding so that people would be bored, but I wanted to make sure that the concepts were clear enough that people would understand them and be able to discuss them in a classroom situation. Each chapter begins with a case study, and then there's some questions about that. And like I said, they also relate to the homework, and hopefully they would provide some starting point for discussions, maybe even arguments within the classroom, and just kind of get people talking and thinking about why things might happen and why people might behave the way they do. The next slide has an example of one of the illustrations. I think some people learn better with visual images, and I tried to kind of take things that I've seen in books. This Swiss cheese thing that James Reason used as an example for why errors happen. You put in a lot of different barriers, but somehow things get through all the barriers on those rare occasions and turn into some terrible problem or safety issue that happens. And so tried to explain what those holes signified. People that were new, people that haven't had good training, a really high workload, and those kind of things. And so I tried to kind of change the illustrations a little bit. Especially proud of the illustrations because they were done by my son, who's an amateur artist. The instructor resources are outlined on the next slide. And I believe that we've put together enough that this could just be incorporated into the curriculum. It could either be a standalone course or it could be used within some other coursework that you have. There are slide decks, PowerPoints for every chapter, a test bank of questions that can be used for tests and assessments, an assignment, like I said, a homework assignment for every chapter, and the lecture slides are put together. There's an example of a slide and all the different things, test question on this slide here. So basically the idea is to make sure that technicians are getting at least some education on what I call the soft skills. And as we move forward with technician training and pharmacist training, the accreditation people in the pharmacy programs are requiring some of these topics, some things about management and human resources and things like that. And I think that for the techs to consider themselves professionals, they should have some background information about that as well. The next slide talks about the standards that are changing for technician accreditation and the requirement that's supposed to happen by 2020 that techs will have to go through a training program. And so I feel like having the training program more robust and include more than just the math kind of thing and the, you know, how to make IVs. I think that the social and administrative type topics will also work their way into the technician curriculum, and I think this would position you to be able to teach that without having to do a lot of research on your own. So that's basically what I have to say about it, and I think we could open up for questions.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you, Stephanie. That was a great overview, and we can now give our audience members an opportunity to ask questions. I'll invite our operator, Brittany, back on to help us.
There is one question that's written already, and the question is in Chapter 8, Negotiation and Emotional Intelligence. I talk about managing conflict, and the question is, do you recommend the same strategies for students? And what I was hoping to do with this was to get you to be able to have sort of a starting point to have discussions about that. And I think that's important to clarify the role of someone who's almost like an observer within a place, that they can't do the same things that someone who's an employee can do, and they need to be aware of that. But I think a lot of the thoughts about how to communicate with people and how to listen to people would be the same whether you were an employee or a student.
And your first question comes from the line of Karam Adbafar.
Yes, it's really actually not a question. I was just curious, how can I obtain a free copy or this copy for this book?
At the end, I will show a slide that has a link to our catalog page. You can request a review copy on our website, or you can contact your account manager, and I have that phone number as well. Let's see here. I can show that a little bit here. So here's some of our contact information.
Okay.
And at the end of this webinar, the screen will actually bring you right to our catalog page with information about the book, and you can click on Instructor Review Copy to request a copy online, or you can feel free to call our representatives at 800-832-0034. But we're definitely excited to get the book out there in instructors' hands, and we are happy to send out review copies.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Your next question comes from the line of Ann Oberg.
Hi, Stephanie and Grace. We are looking at this book right now to see if we could incorporate it into our curriculum. Do you have a current mapping to the ASHP model curriculum for this textbook?
No, I haven't done that.
Are you planning to do it?
We can help, Stephanie, if that's something instructors are looking for. I know we've done it in other health areas.
Okay, yeah, nobody's asked that.
Yeah, we'll talk internally and talk with Stephanie, and then we can get back to you. I actually have your contact info, so that was a great question, Ann. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
This question comes from the line of Janelle Geddes.
Well, I actually had a question about the Instructor Resources, which is what the first person already asked, so I have my answer now, so thank you.
Okay, yes, as you're requesting the review copy, you can also request the Instructor Resources on our website, and you can also get in touch with your account manager to send Instructor Resources so you can take a look at those. Okay, well, I want to, again, thank Stephanie very much for the great presentation and overview on this text, and I wanted to thank all the participants for joining us today. I thank Stephanie and our editorial team. We've all really tried to put together a great package with everything that a student and an instructor would need to be successful. We hope that your students will enjoy using the text and that you will enjoy using the accompanying resources in your course. And thanks again to Stephanie for all her hard work. This text is really a great addition to our list of other pharmacy technician resources, and we're very excited to publish this text and continue to hear instructor feedback. So I will leave you with this screen showing our contact information and the website link to learn more about the text. You can visit go.jblearning.com/speshek to reserve a review copy or request the instructor resources. You could also contact your account manager for a review copy. There's a link that you can find your representative. It will help you to email them directly. Or you can call us on the phone anytime, 800-832-0034. So thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie. Please feel free to give us a call or check out our website for more information. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.